Hello, good afternoon. It is Monday, December 16th. This is my second live session of the day, and I am Rob, that developer dad. And we're working on .NET applications. In particular, I've moved from working on the internal framework components that needed some heavy iteration last week, back into actually implementing use cases for the administrative backend that I'm going to be using for helping me run the DMs familiar as an actual business. So we get to do all kinds of boring business stuff. And this morning we implemented an initial MVP of the store customer profile changes stuff. On Friday, we finished retrofitting the framework updates into Loader Create Customer Profile. And this afternoon, we're going to start thinking about, we're not going to probably not get to do much in the way of implementation, but we're going to start thinking about all of the things that are going to need to happen for managed customer subscription automation. And I suppose the very first thing that we ought to do is alter the contract for this, because we're not going to want to use this pattern that I've got here. We're going to want to use something a little bit more robust. So we've got our subscription action request. Why don't we take a peek at this? Go to the definition. There is nothing on there. All right, well, we're going to need to know off the top of our heads prop string activity name identifies what activity we need to perform on the customer's subscription. Prop string request source, the name of the system from which the activity originated. Prop string customer ID, prop string customer ID source. Now that sounds an awful lot like the external ID for the customer. I'm not sure I want to collapse that into an object property at this point. Prop string subscription SKU, SKU. Identifies which subscription the request is for. And I think that's enough to get us started. Not SKE, but SKU. Save. All right. So we also need a new class called ManageSubscription request. It will inherit operation request of type subscription action request. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And we'll just implement the abstract, set up the constructor, set up a private read-only string workload name. And this is the name of our workload or the use case. And it's Manage Customer Subscription. I was originally considering having a different endpoint URL for each activity that we could perform, but that didn't seem terribly flexible. And this isn't workload name, it's operation name. And I just want to make sure I've got that all spelled right. I do. So let's just return operation name, save that. And I believe we've got everything that we need in here. Cool. So save that and close that table account provider, customer account manager. I think we need to come back to our subscription action request and actually create a constructor. We're just going to create a default constructor right now. Activity name, string.empty. Request source is string empty. Customer ID source, subscription SKU. Save. The identifier for the customer whose subscription we are altering the vendor who owns the provided customer ID. Save. All right. That's all pretty well documented. Now let's focus in on the activity name. Or rather, let's focus in on what needs to happen when we get into this method. I'm just going to hit File. Okay, I don't have anything to save. Store account profile. Yeah, what the heck. We'll go ahead and implement those things now. Do I want to stash? Let's stash. Can I stash? I can stash. Let's stash these. And what I actually want to do is push this branch to remote. And open up GitHub. GitHub. Commit TDMF admin. It has a branch. Store account profile. Let's do a pull request. Create. Merge. Confirm. I don't have any conflicts or anything like that. Let's go ahead and delete the branch. Bounce back over here. I want to check out main. And I need to fetch pull. All right. And then branch, create branch from main. We're going to call it feature, implement, manage subscription. Here we go. Stash. And let's apply the stash. Oh, I don't have any. Okay. Well, let's just commit these. Changes the service and data contracts for manage. Oh, what's it called? Customer subscription from the placeholders to what will actually develop. Commit and publish. Off you go. There we go. Now I've got slightly better source control hygiene. So, when a subscription action request arrives, we need to will generally follow the same basic steps. 1. Load the profile of the identified customer. 2. Load the catalog item that represents the subscription SKU. Gives us details for the subscription SKU. 3, make sure the activity is applicable to the current subscription status. Thank you, GitHub Copilot. 4, perform the activity. Save the profile back to local storage. 6, reconcile the authorization groups that the customer should have membership in at the identity service. 7, log the response. Actually, wait, 7, handle the result of all this stuff. If something went wrong and is unrecoverable, we need to roll back any payment changes that were made and is unrecoverable. We need to notify an administrator, possibly roll back the changes made at the payment processor. If nothing went wrong, we can just carry on with our lives. So the only time we're going to tell me I need to do something is when something completely unrecoverable happens. And our response from this, I think, is just going to be well, I could use a straight up Boolean value for, yeah, it worked, or no, it didn't work. But I feel like I should return something useful to the service that'll be calling the webhook that eventually ends up executing in this method. Now the question here is, do I want to disconnect the webhook receiver API from this actual backend business API? Or do I want to have that webhook just flow directly in here? And that's a decision I haven't completely made yet. I think for simplicity's sake, the webhook API is gonna, or the webhook handling API, we'll just call this subsystem directly. I'm gonna stick an API component in front of this manager. So the API can figure out which HTTP status family to use in that case. Now, this step is going to be exactly the same, no matter who comes in, or no matter what the actual activity is. This step will be exactly the same, no matter what the activity is. These two steps could be wildly different from one activity kind to the next. And then these two are resource actions, or these, 5 and 6 are resource activities. 7 is just sort of orchestrator stuff, preparing to send a response back to the caller. So let's break these up. One and 2 are the same for every request. Do those here. Three and 4 are going to be different for each activity. We should we'll use a strategy pattern for those. Five and 6 are the same for every request. Do those here. 5, 6, and 7. Save. All right. Now, I planned for this session poorly, so I'm going to take like a 1 or 2 minute pause, and I'll be right back. Hey, sorry about that. I am back. All right, so what's going to be tricky about this one is figuring out which ID we had come in. Need better understanding of what IDs are going to come in on these webhook calls. You know what? I am going to enforce. Let's close this. In the subscription action request, manage subscription request. Oh, what the heck? I shouldn't call that request. I'm going to rename this to subscription activity details, or subscription action details. And just make it singular. Rename. There we go. Change this to subscription action detail. There we go. Save that, close out of here. And on that subscription action detail, we are going to have public string customer profile ID. And set customer profile ID to string.empty. Identifies the customer's profile using this system's customer identifier. And in this case, it's going to correspond to their Entra ID. All right, so let's run out to the customer account manager. And I can send that Entra account ID over to the payment processor when I create the sign up request, or the buy subscription request, rather. So var profile equals user account access dot. Actually, I should probably use the customer builder. Dot. And doesn't exist that way. It is customer builder dot, nope. Gah. What do I have it called? It's customer account manager, get account builder. I don't like the name of that, but I think I want to rename this to account builder. There we go. And instead of having it be a private method, you know what? I'm going to leave it as a private method. I'm not going to mess with all of that stuff of refactoring it into being a private property. All right. Customer profile. Customer equals account builder dot load or build customer. Oh, I need a build profile request. Do I? Yep, I do. We'll leave that angry for a second. Profile request. Build profile. Build prof request equals new. Then I need to pass in the originating request. And the action request dot something. That's right, customer profile ID. Can I convert from subscription action detail? Oh, of course. Duh. So we'll come up to iAccountManager, and this becomes a ManageSubscription request. Not a manager subscription request, but a ManageSubscription request. Save. Bounce over here. Change this to Manage Subscription Request. And we're going to add some pass-through properties. So, public action detail request detail. We'll just do the payload and public string make it nullable just in case. Customer profile ID. Request detail.customer profile ID. Cool. Come back here. Customer profile ID, we've got it. And build prof request. What's this complaining about? Ah, yes, this is asynchronous. And guess what? This is not an asynchronous method. So back to the contract. Rename this to async. Right now, we're just going to return a task of this or that. Run back here, public async task of that tuple type. Save. Now what are you complaining about? Build profile. Oh, what are you talking about? What's the name? This brings back a customer profile response. Customer profile response. Builder response equals that. Now, before we run this, excuse me, we should make sure we can actually execute any of this stuff. So, if action request is null, we're going to, out you go. Return null. Or a new argument exception. If action request dot customer profile ID is null. Nope, we have to use is string dot is null or white space. I always like my Boolean tests to be explicit. Okay. That'll work. All right. I think it's time to wrap this up into an actual response of some sort. Excuse me. Let's do it. New class. Manage subscription response. Operation response. Got to spell it right. Of That's right. I'm just going to do a bool. Generate the constructor, bool payload. And prop bool subscription was updated. Payload. There. That'll work. Now, payload is not nullable, and that's fine. So I'm going to need this class name. Copy. Come over to iAccountManager and replace this tuple with that. Come back to our method signature and replace the tuple with our class. ManageSubscription response. Response equals new with the action request. And I actually need to make that a nullable Boolean. There. I am doing something dumb in here. Oh, yep, you got to do it this way. Set all of those things up. Save that. Payload is a Boolean. Okay, good. Spelling. Subscription action request arrives. Okay. And pardon me. Goodness. Service error. Null. Request payload equals new. There we go. Error kind is null request payload. Response.add error. Return response. Down here, service error equals new customer profile ID on the request payload was null or empty. That's definitely an error. Malformed request payload. malformed request. Response.addError and return the response. Okay, so there's two validations out of the way. We should probably do some null checking here. That'll work. If we have errors, we're going to bail out. Two, load the catalog item that gives us the details for the subscription SKU. Pull that all the way up here. And oh golly, if request, where's my request? Action request. Dot request detail dot subscription SKU or white space we can't really take any further action. So customer subscription, subscription SKU, the request detail did not identify the type of subscription to be modified. Subscription SKU was missing. Malformed request payload, is that what we're using up here too? Malformed request payload, very good. Now we're just going to add this and return. Now we're doing an awful lot of validation before we do stuff. And in fact, we should probably detect for this condition before we even expend any effort at all. So let's bump up here. Paste that. That's a whole lot of stuff. That's an awful lot of stuff. save. And where's my error message? Who's complaining about what? Here we go. Return response. There we go. I'm going to leave all of this checking alone right here. But this is just request validation. And at least for readability's sake, because we're not going to be using these exact checks anywhere else, I might want to shuffle those off to some other method. Just to see, or just to make this stuff more readable here. So build, okay. And then we validate the response. And then we carry on. So we'll load the catalog once we've got the SKU. And I think that's as far as I want to go this afternoon. I might go ahead and finish implementing the custom, or the things that we have to do for each and every case this afternoon after I end the stream. But when we get down to 3 and 4 here, that we're going to shell out to something kind of like the customer builder that we already have. And I think I'm going to do something engine-like, but not a full formalized engine. Because any changes that I make to these activity executions are going to be happening on the same cadence as the customer account manager itself. They're pretty specific to account management. And I don't really have any reason to change those unless I'm changing the way we're managing accounts. So I'm going to embed that conceptual engine type thing into the actual manager here, because it doesn't need to exist as its own project, I don't think. I'll run it into its own namespace, or at least put it inside the internals. But beyond that, I'm not gonna create a new .NET project for that at this point. If I discover that I'm incorrect, I'll at least have it somewhat segmented out so I can pull it into its own discrete project later if I have to. So for now, I'm gonna let this sit. As I said, I might implement this goop and finish implementing this goop today offline, just so that we can get to the interesting stuff tomorrow. But I've also got a boatload of other research to do as far as what these inbound events are going to be called, and just stuff like that. So we'll see how far I get with that stuff. But for now, I think I'm at a good spot. So I'm going to say, until next time, be kind to yourselves, take care of yourselves and the people around you, and happy coding. Bye now.